Howdy, everyone, and welcome to Specification Writing. My name is Mason Bourgeois, and I'm the supervisor of the blanket order bid team. Joining me today is Chastity Austin, who is supervisor of the one-time buy bid team. This course is designed to go over the different types of specifications, the basic principles for preparing specifications, and the importance of their use in the procurement function. Our ultimate goal is to achieve customer satisfaction for the agency, encourage participation of quality vendors, and thereby satisfy the general public who benefit from the acquired goods and services. You know best what will meet your needs, and it is our function to provide you with useful information and tips to prepare effective specifications. Our objectives for today include to discuss the importance of the specification compliance with the revised statutes, the definition and purpose of a well-prepared specification, our state's policies, different types of specifications, some basic writing principles and characteristics of a good specification, and information you should include on a shopping cart. The first thing we're going to talk about is the importance of compliance with the policies and regs that govern specifications. Specification preparation, maintenance, content, different types, and other matters related to specifications are governed by Part 4 of the Louisiana Procurement Code as found in Revised Statute Title 39, Section 1651, and Chapters 1 and 3 of the Rules and Regs as found in the Louisiana Administrative Code Title 34. In brief, Chapter 1 of the Code goes over definitions and procedures for the development of specs, while Chapter 3 goes over the competitive bidding process, addendums, and awards. It's important for all state procurement professionals that prepare specs to be at least familiar with these. They're worth reviewing in general, may both be found online, and when issues or confusion arise regarding specs, these sections of the statutes and code are essential references. Our state's procurement policy: to promote overall economy, to encourage maximum competition, to describe requirements without being unduly restrictive, to procure commercially standard products, avoiding unique requirements. It is the policy of the state that specifications permit maximum competition consistent with these purposes, as more competition has the ability to create better pricing. Specifications shall be drafted with the objective of clearly describing the state's requirements. All specifications shall be written in such a manner as to describe the requirements to be met without having the effect of exclusively requiring a proprietary supply, service, or major repair item, or procurement from a sole source, unless no other manner of description will suffice. It's the general policy of our state to procure standard commercial products whenever practicable. In developing specifications, accepted commercial standards shall be used and unique requirements shall be avoided.
So what is the definition of a specification? Louisiana Revised Statute 39, 1556 defines a specification as any description of the physical, functional, or performance characteristics or of the nature of a supply, service, construction, or major repair item. The specification includes, as appropriate, requirements for inspecting, testing, or preparing a supply, service, or construction item for delivery. When writing specifications, you will need to describe what it is you need to buy so that bidders can give their best and most accurate pricing. The purpose of a specification is to serve as a basis for obtaining a supply, service, or major repair item adequate and suitable for the state's needs in a cost-effective manner, taking into account, to the extent practicable, the costs of ownership and operation as well as initial acquisition costs. A properly written specification is perhaps the main tool to assure a successful procurement without compromising the need for quality. So bottom line, the purpose is to get the best product or service at the best price. Everyone develops specifications. When ordering a pizza at a restaurant such as Domino's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, what are some of the questions the person taking your order would ask? What size pizza do you want? What kind of crust? What kind of sauce? What toppings? Any additions or deletions or extra amounts of ingredients? Will this be dine-in, takeout, or delivery? Any additional side items such as breadsticks, wings, drinks, or dessert? These are specifications. You wouldn't expect to walk into a pizza place and just say, I want to buy a pizza. They may be the pizza subject matter experts, but they don't know what kind of pizza you want. You have to describe it. Let's go over another example. Let's say your agency needs to buy some new fencing. Would you just tell the contractor, build me a fence? Of course not. There are many different types of fencing. Here are just a few. Depending on what the purpose of the fence is, the type of fence and therefore the specifications will be extremely different. A fence to hold inmates in for the Department of Corrections would be very different than a fence lining a walkway in a state park or one surrounding a historical site. You have to specify things such as materials, measurements, design, installation, any special features, and probably color in a lot of instances. All of these things become even more important if it needs to match existing fencing that's already there. Another good example would be trash cans. There are various types of trash cans, such as color, material, open, or covered. Your agency is the only source that we may rely on to determine what kind of trash can we are bidding out.
Now, what is a competitive spec and what is a closed spec? A competitive specification is when more than one brand can meet the requirements. This gives the best opportunity to receive lower pricing based on competition among vendors. A closed spec is when only one brand can be bid, but is available from multiple distributors. It provides some competition, but restricts the number of bidders and therefore can lead to higher prices. Closed specifications are more commonly known as proprietary, and you must provide justification as to why only this brand or model will meet your needs. Although competitive specs are preferred, there are definitely cases where proprietary specifications are necessary. For instance, if you work for an agency responsible for law enforcement and its officers are all issued a certain type of gas mask for emergencies, which they're trained on how to use, you wouldn't want a bunch of different brands and models of gas masks being awarded every time it goes out for bid, causing extra training and confusion. Therefore, we allow closed or proprietary specifications to be included in invitation to bids. Let's look at some other examples of when this might be needed. There are three basic categories for when proprietary specs are used, as written in the revised statutes, which we referenced earlier. Let's say you work for an agency that's trying to buy a part or an accessory for a large piece of lab equipment, which is under warranty. The manufacturer has stated that putting non-OEM parts in the machine will void the warranty. In order to keep the warranty, you would need to purchase the OEM parts. You would then request to bid this out as proprietary under maintainability. Next, think of uniforms. They need to, of course, be uniform. You don't want employees or officers or other workers who wear a uniform wearing different products because that would contradict the whole point. This would be proprietary due to standardization. Lastly, say you have a tractor and you need to buy an arm and a bucket to go on the front. Frequently, only accessories made by the same manufacturer would be compatible with the equipment. This would make the arm and bucket proprietary due to them needing to be compatible to the front of the tractor. Now, the importance of a clear specification. Clear can have different definitions depending on the use, but what we mean by clear is a specification so understandable that just about anyone that can read basic English can decipher what we're asking them to bid on. Vendors are usually willing to discuss specification problems, but if the issues are unresolved, they have a right to protest. Paraphrasing from the procurement code, any person who is aggrieved in connection with a solicitation shall protest in writing to the chief procurement officer at least 2 days prior to the opening of bids. Most solicitation protests occur as a result of unduly restrictive specifications. Once a timely protest is received, the bids must be impounded and cannot be opened until the protest has been resolved. Specifications cannot be protested after the bids are open. When items or services are bid out, we obviously want the people we're asking to bid to understand what the item or service is to be bid on. This starts with you in our office, understanding what exactly is being bid out, then for us to work together to make the specs as intelligible as possible. If specs are left up for any kind of interpretation or the cause of many issues assumption, there's room for error. A well-written specification streamlines and simplifies the procurement process, while poor specifications cause unnecessary delays and may result in inappropriate purchases, a protest, or even a rebid. A good spec would include the following characteristics. It's simple, which means it avoids unnecessary detail, but complete enough to ensure requirements will meet your agency's need. It's clear, use concise, plain, and simple terminology that is understandable to us and the bidders. Accurate, use units of measure compatible with industry standards, clearly identify quantities and packaging requirements. Competitive, identify currently available brand and model equivalent, avoid unneeded extras that could reduce or eliminate competition and increase costs. Be flexible, it avoid totally inflexible specifications which prevent acceptance of a bid that could offer greater performance for fewer dollars. Use minimums or maximums when possible for features such as dimensions, weight, or speed. And measurable and verifiable. When bids are evaluated, ensure there's a way to determine if the bidder meets the requirements. Think, could this be found on a spec sheet, or would this be determined via samples? To recap, a good spec streamlines the process, enables bidders to understand what is being bid on, encourages competition, and a bad spec causes delays. It may cause vendor questions or even addenda, or a protest, or a rebid. Useful tools. This is a list that will help you gather the most accurate competitive specifications. Partnership, specifically between the end user, the agency purchasing agent, and the state procurement analyst. Many specifications are prepared by end users that have the knowledge and expertise about the product or service needed. Research, competitive specifications should be written so that at least 3 brands and models can be considered in the bid process. We should encourage end users to research multiple sources and should research products themselves. While research on our end is time-consuming, it's time well spent. Research greatly helps everyone understand definitions and what the product may look like from different sources. From this research, the degree to which a specification is open or restricted can have a major impact on how many competitors participate and on the quality level of the products bid by those competitors. History. Specifications should be reviewed prior to releasing with past history in mind and for any apparent competitive restrictions. We are not technical experts or product specialists and must rely on you and the end users for assistance. However, experience and knowledge acquired over a period of time is beneficial. Vendors' expertise. Vendors are very knowledgeable about their products and may be consulted to obtain the benefits of their expertise in developing specifications. Again, consult with several to ensure competitiveness of the specification. Maintain current vendor catalogs and brochures to use as a reference if possible. Pre-bid conference. On a highly technical and or large dollar volume purchase, you may want to consider having a pre-bid conference to determine that specifications are not restrictive. Pre-bid conferences are announced in the solicitation and invite potential bidders to physically meet with the agency and a purchasing analyst at a designated time and place. This can also provide an opportunity for bidders to view installation sites. This type of conference is usually held 2 weeks after the release of the solicitation and 2 weeks prior to the bid opening. Mandatory attendance is discouraged, but must be advertised if required. Anything deemed necessary to be included in the solicitation that isn't currently included found at the pre-bid conference by any attendees shall be acknowledged in the form of an addendum. Period of inquiry. Another tool to consider to ensure that specifications are competitive is a period of inquiry. Sometimes bidders fail to ask questions in the presence of their competition, but are willing to inquire in writing. The period of inquiry is during the solicitation period. Potential bidders are provided an opportunity to address their questions in writing. Responses are prepared from user or your input, and all responses are sent in the form of an addendum, which is distributed to all bidders solicited. Some solicitations can do both a pre-bid conference and a period of inquiry. If this occurs, the period of inquiry follows the pre-bid conference. And addenda, which has already been referenced. These are a way to officially make changes to a published RFX. Oftentimes, they are issued to make any changes or updates to the specifications. Addenda in general should be avoided, but they are a great tool to circumvent a cancel and a rebid. All potential bidders are notified when an addenda is published.
There are many types of specifications. We will go over a few. The first type we will discuss is a generic specification. A generic specification includes descriptions of the particular design, function, or performance of goods, services, or repairs. Cites brand names and numbers representing quality and performance called for and invites bids on comparable items or products of any manufacturer. A brand name without adequate description of the features or performance expectations is insufficient to justify the disqualification of an inferior product. In other words, if a feature is inherent to one brand, another brand cannot be disqualified unless that feature or performance expectation is mentioned in the specifications. Bid responses are evaluated solely on the requirements included in the specifications. Examples of generic specifications are services, custom printing, and food. The next type of specification we will discuss is competitive with brand name or equal. Brand name and model numbers represent quality and performance desired. With these specifications, we must include desired specifications, not just brand and model number. and we cannot evaluate a bid on criteria that's not listed in the specifications. This is the most frequently used type of specification and is used for almost any type of item. Other types of specifications include proprietary brand name specifications. A proprietary specification is one that cites brand name, model number, or some other designation that identifies a specific product to be offered exclusive of others. Since use of proprietary specifications is restricted, it may be used only when the Chief Procurement Officer or the head of a purchasing agency makes a written determination that only the identified brand name item or items will satisfy the state's needs. A proprietary purchase is available from more than one source if the single source manufacturer has chosen to market his product through distributors. We shall seek to identify sources from which the designated item can be obtained and shall solicit competitive bids on proprietary purchases to achieve whatever degree of competition is practicable. Solicitations shall state that proprietary purchases have been approved. An example of this language is, this solicitation has been approved as a proprietary purchase, and only bidders meeting the exact specifications or brand will be considered for an award. Sole source means the item or service is available from only one source and is not sold through distributors. The Office of State Procurement sole source checklist includes all the requirements of a sole source purchase. Qualified products or brand name list. A qualified products list may be developed with the approval of the Chief Procurement Officer or the head of a purchasing or using agency authorized to develop a qualified products list. A representative group of potential suppliers is solicited for testing and examination to determine acceptability for inclusion on a qualified products list. Any supplier, even though not solicited, may offer its products for consideration in accordance with prior published requirements. Common or general use item. A specification which has been developed and approved for repeated use in procurement. Common or general items are used where the supplies, service, or major repair items are used in common by several using agencies or used repeatedly by one using agency where item is commercially produced or provided remains relatively stable while the frequency or volume of procurement is significant. Where the state's recurring needs require uniquely designed or specially produced items, or when the Chief Procurement Officer or head of a purchasing agency authorized to prepare such specifications finds it to be in the state's best interest. If a using agency requests the preparation of a specification for a common or general use item, the Chief Procurement Officer shall prepare such specification if such officer determines required conditions have been met. The Chief Procurement Officer or head of a purchasing or using agency shall provide an opportunity to comment on draft specifications, give final approval, revise, or cancel such specifications. Standard specifications are normally used for statewide competitive contracts. Functional or performance specification. State agencies should emphasize functional or performance criteria while limiting design or other detailed physical descriptions to those necessary to meet the needs of the state to the extent practicable. Performance specifications specify what a product must do, how well it must perform without regard to how it is constructed, what size it is, etc. An example for use of this type of specification might be for technical X-ray equipment or window washing. While there may be other types of specifications, we have discussed the most common types. You may also see other names for specification types with similar meanings. Specifications may also be a combination of types, such as generic competitive and performance. So when it comes to measurements, try to list ranges instead of exact dimensions, if possible. If you're buying some ice chests, for example, do you really need them to be exactly 17.2 quart size? Or would 16 to 18 quarts be okay? If weight is an important factor, indicate the acceptable range or minimum or maximum acceptable weight. Specifying exact measurements on a particular product can often lead to a restrictive proprietary specification. Don't list requirements if they are not necessary. Do you absolutely have to have royal blue ice chest? Don't copy brochure marketing language. Brochures contain lots of marketing fluff and should not be copied word for word in developing specifications. Instead, select only the essential characteristics or features necessary to meet the agency's requirements. The vendor's job is to convince you that their product is the best. By using vague language such as user-friendly, best-in-class, new and improved, they don't really mean anything, they just sound good. Leave out brochure language that cannot be objectively evaluated. Delete words like patented, unique, and trademark symbols. Include any special requirements the vendor must provide, such as installation, training, warranty, etc. List any special delivery requirements. If you are having equipment installed, construction work done, or an on-site service provided, you should always request that vendors do a site visit prior to submitting a bid. If vendors are expected to install a new machine and train employees on how to use it, that has to be spelled out in the bid. If a vendor has to get a large piece of equipment up to the second floor of a building and there is no freight elevator, they need to know that. If installation is required, provide details on what is expected of the vendor. If a site visit is required, indicate contact name and telephone number. Delivery, warranty, or training requirements should be clearly defined. Identify any instructional materials or service manuals that the vendor must furnish. Also, incorporate into the specifications the type of training they must provide to the end users. If the specification requires compliance with certain industry test methods or standards, include copies or indicate where copies can be found. So, work with the end user to develop specifications. Provide enough detail so the bidder understands the requirements. Technical equipment specifications should contain enough detail to differentiate the level of quality or performance required. Be clear and precise. Avoid ambiguity. The specification writer should always question if the specification would answer all necessary questions if roles were reversed and he or she were the vendor trying to respond to an invitation to bid. If possible, begin the description with a common name for the goods or services required. For example, use facial tissue instead of Kleenex. When compatibility with an existing piece of equipment is a factor, describe the equipment, connectors, interfaces, brand, and model of the existing equipment. Describe requirements generically rather than brand-specific when possible. If the agency desires to purchase a model like one they already have, verification of current availability is advisable to avoid time loss in bidding discontinued models. All brand and model numbers referenced must be in current production and available on the market. If specifications indicate an acceptable brand and model number, invite competitive bids by indicating or equal. If the specification is for maintenance, identify the frequency and the extent of required service. When bidding maintenance, define the extent of service, parts, labor, travel, service hours required, number of preventative maintenance inspections, and any other inclusions or exclusions. Specifications should avoid using restrictive language such as vendor must be located within a 20-mile radius of Baton Rouge. Always request a reasonable response time instead. Indicate packaging requirements and be open to alternates. Clearly state the packaging requirements, size, types of finish, color coordination, etc. Requesting samples. Sample requirements should be clearly identified as a requirement in the specifications with clear instructions on how to label the samples. And specifications should always be competitive. You want to eliminate mandatory requirements if not important to the function of the purchase. You want to include requirements important to the specification. Never assume it is understood that something will be included. Only requirements that are in the specification can be used to evaluate the bid. Just because a particular brand and number specified has an inherent feature, you can now rule out other bidders if the feature was not described in the specifications. Submittal of literature, proof of training, insurance, or other certificate requirements should not be mandated to be submitted with the bid. Instead, allow bidders to submit these documents after the bids have been opened, prior to award. Specify award formulas. Vendors need to know how the award will be made. For example, all or none awards or delivery being a factor in the award. The best rules are to never overspecify or underspecify. Don't include requirements or features that you don't really need. It will only increase the cost and restrict competition. On the flip side of this is underspecifying. This may save money, but it can also compromise the quality level, and you may not receive the product or service adequate to fulfill your needs.
And here are some basic language tips. Shall or must means it is imperative. If you have shall listed as part of a spec, then any vendor who does not meet that part of the specification will be disqualified. May means it is permissive, and should means it is desirable. May or should means we won't necessarily rule out a vendor who does not meet those specifications, or it may mean that it's things we could get after the bid opening date. For example, if you're bidding a contract for pest control, and you say bidders must provide a copy of their pesticide license with their bid, then any vendor who does not is automatically disqualified. But if you say bidders should provide a copy of their pesticide license with their bid, then even if they don't send it with their bid, you can follow up later to get it. And means it must have both, or means either is acceptable. If you say, for instance, the product must have feature A and feature B, then only bidders who can supply both will be accepted. But if you say feature A or feature B, because perhaps both features perform the same function but in a different way, then vendors who bid either one will be accepted. There's some general information you should be including on your shopping carts. Item or service description. This lists what you are buying, including the brand and model to be bid out as either proprietary or as an or equal. Regardless, specifications should also be included with the shopping cart. The correct commodity code. This is important, making sure that it's correct for the product or service you're requesting. If the commodity code is incorrect, this could cause no bids received or higher pricing due to vendors who supply this commodity not being solicited to submit a bid. Suggested vendors. The suggested vendor may also be the incumbent or the vendor who currently holds that particular contract or PO. The correct unit of measurement. The correct unit of measure should be based on what service or item you're purchasing. Example, you want to put hours as a unit of measure for security guards instead of a monthly rate, as security guard services are invoiced by the hours and not by the month. Estimated cost. This can be from a recent quote given by a vendor or as an idea on what you may expect to pay for the services, and also helps guide the Office of State Procurement on which procurement method to use. Exact or estimated quantities. Estimated quantities are used when you don't know exactly how much of an item or service you are needing and are commonly found on blanket orders and contracts. Exact quantities are more common on one-time buys. Any special delivery requirements, such as what floor is the product being delivered, is there an elevator, is there a loading ramp? This can serve as valuable information for the delivering vendor and may even affect the price. To continue, you should also list any special packaging requirements, such as 10 in a case or wrapped individually. The award formula should be included. For example, do some of the items need to be grouped together, or does the entire shopping cart need to be all or none? Site visit information, if required. As we discussed earlier, some services and occasionally products require site visits by the potential bidders so they inspect the landscape and bid properly. If one is needed, is it mandatory or non-mandatory site visit? Who's the contact and what is their contact information? Licenses and certifications. Will the vendor require any licenses, such as vendors who provide security guard services, which must be licensed with the Board of Security Examiners Board, or vendors who do grounds maintenance, who must have their own particular licenses? Or any special requirements or terms and conditions? Does this purchase require anything else that may need to be included, such as delivery of the essence, or are product samples required? Specification writing is a balancing act between providing too little detail and too much detail. If not enough, you may not get the correct product. Or, it's not the right size, or it doesn't have all the features you wanted, or doesn't match what you may want it to match, or the delivery might not be correct. Or if you put too much detail, vendors may have a right to complain, like that they can only bid one brand, or that they can't bid at all even, or that they can bid lower if there were less specs, or even if they want to protest and hold everything up. It's all of our job to even the scale.
The key element to a successful purchase is specifications. The key element to success throughout the procurement cycle is teamwork between agencies and the Office of State Procurement, so that the state receives the correct necessary goods and services in a prompt, efficient manner while getting the best value for its dollar. The best rules are to never overspecify or underspecify. Don't include requirements of features that you don't really need. It will only increase the cost and restrict competition. On the flip side of this is underspecify. This may save money, but it can also compromise the quality level, and you may not receive the product or service adequate to fulfill your needs. Hopefully, you have learned some guidelines and tips to allow you to write an effective specification to obtain products or services to meet your needs. Specifications are the lifeline of the procurement process. They must be broad enough to allow for fair competition, yet be precise enough to attain quality commodities and services needed. Because technology changes, existing products are improved, new products are introduced, and your needs change. The task of preparing and updating specifications is never ending. Continue to research the new and the need to revise the old. And now we'll make time for questions.
Looks like we aren't getting any questions. If you feel the need, please reach out to myself. My email's there, my phone number, or Chastity Austin.
Thank you.
Thank you all.